Yeah, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Kent Academics, that is the Karnataka ENT Hospital academic program and otology. Yeah, today we are continuing with our earlier topic, that is approaches nuclear and matter. So Dr. Oshin Thomas, who did a fantastic job on part one, that is endoral approach, will continue with the retroauricular or postoral approaches. This is a huge topic, so she will do this in two parts. So this will be part one. Welcome you all again. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can start the presentation now. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, one and all gathered here. So as we have already discussed in the earlier class, we are actually studying the surgical approaches, various surgical approaches to middle ear and mastoid. So in the last class, we have did a detailed discussion on endoral approaches. So from today's class, we'll be seeing retroauricular approaches. So this retroauricular approaches, we have divided into two parts. Okay, today we'll be studying the part one. So why are we studying all these retroauricular various approaches? So yeah, as we can see, approach is very important in whatever area, whatever field we are dealing with. Approach is very important. So like to hit the target properly, we should have a proper planning. We should have a proper map, like where to go, from where to start, everything, so that we can hit the target excellently. Yeah. So for otology surgeons, for ENT concern of view, so these are the points where we have to hit. And so let me tell just a brief introduction. So this is the middle ear anatomy, very beautifully discussed in Livio Prosutis endoscopic ear surgery. So very detailed anatomy is there, and that doesn't come in the scope of this class. So for our junior colleagues, we have, this is the middle ear where we can see, and these are the various parts of the middle ear where we can see. Protympanum, which is anteriorly. We have retrotympanum, which is posterior. Okay, and hypotympanum, which is inferior to the annulus, and epitympanum, which is above the annulus. So in the retrotympanum, that is the area where we find sinus tympani and the facial recess, which is the most common area to have cholesteatoma or a recurrent cholesteatoma. We might miss those areas. So for an ENT surgeon, we have to find. So these are this is again detailed anatomy of the retrotympanum, where we have all various recesses, 4 different kinds of recesses where we will find. So all these, anatomy is very important, and to hit these areas, we might have to adapt different approaches. We might have to keep different positions of the patient. So that we are going to study, that we are studying in detail, okay? How to approach like an area, and what are the advantages and the disadvantages we will come through when we are going through each areas. So again, now why again and again in the coming slides, we are actually emphasizing the importance of different approaches. So what are the things which we can come across when we are doing a surgery? So here you can see a perforation which is in the anterior quadrant, and here you can see a perforation in the posterior quadrant. And again, there is almost a large central perforation involving almost 3 quadrants. Then we can see there is a bulge in the anterior canal wall. Okay, and sometimes there will be a big overhanging in the posterior part, where we'll have to remove the overhanging. And sometimes we'll have to do an extensive surgery in the mastoid. So there are various ways. So different people have different anatomy, and we should be equipped with all different approaches, and we should be a master in all the approaches, so that when we do the surgery, we will not face any difficulty. So that is the importance of approaches. So the decision as to perform any of the various approach should be based on preoperative evaluation. So we'll see endoscopically, we'll take a CT, HRCT temporal bone, we'll evaluate the patient. Then only we'll decide as to, we should know the expected extent of the surgery, the necessity of opening the mastoid, okay, and the given anatomical features all have to be considered. Okay, so earlier, many of us know the most commonly used surgical approaches are endoral approaches. We always have studied endoral approaches, retroauricular approaches, tympanotomies. So I'm introducing you. Actually, these are not just names. Actually, in endoral approach itself, there are almost 15 different techniques of endoral approaches, which you have already covered. Okay, and retroauricular approach almost there are 13 different approaches for retroauricular approaches. So it is a very huge topic. So we'll be discussing only the first 8, and there are various tympanotomies also. So altogether, there are 35 different approaches for middle ear and mastoid itself, which we are studying in very detail. Okay, so here this already class we have done in the last class, all the endaural approaches. In today's class, we'll be dealing with retroauricular approaches. In that, mainly we'll be focusing on retroauricular fold incision. So don't worry, we'll be telling you slowly in the coming slides. We'll be discussing what is fold incision, what is flap incision, everything will be covering in detail. So here we can see today's class will be covering this 4 lateral circumferential incision, skin incisions, and for 3 medial circumferential incisions. So we will be covering 7 techniques in detail today. Okay, this will be covered in the next part. The remaining of the retroauricular fold incisions, retroauricular flap incisions, posterior vascular strip technique, and management of tympanometrial flap will be discussed in the next part of the retroauricular. In the last class, we'll be having tympanotomies, superior approach, and the anterior approaches. So this is the outline of our classes. Okay, so all these techniques, these have been evolved in last 50 years, and there are great scientists and otology surgeons who have dedicated their entire life to see, they have tried every techniques, they have done number of approaches, and they have actually taught us what is good and what is not good, what to do and what not to do, what are the difficulties we will face when we do each approaches. So actually, when all these people, from all their experience, they have taught us, they have written textbooks, everything. So what we have to do is just follow their footsteps. So what that we are doing, actually, we are actually like remembering all these great scientists, and we are actually studying their techniques. So before going to any surgical approach, the most important thing is we have to have a clear knowledge on the anatomy. So this is the temporal bone here. Temporal bone anatomy itself is a very big class. It's itself is another class. So, but we will have to, before studying our topic, we will have to have a few basic idea of like what structures we are going to come across. So for our junior colleagues, okay, this is the temporal bone, okay, and we have the various parts of the temporal bone. This is mastoid part, this is the squamous part, we have the tympanic part of the, and behind we have this Peters part, which is not seen here. So this is the spine of Henle. So what is the importance of spine of Henle? Spine of Henle is also known as suprameatal spine. Now, what is the importance of spine of Henle? Because when we are actually, our whole idea is when we put the incision, we are actually first going in search of the spine of Henle, because spine of Henle shows us the entrance to the bony part of the EAC, external auditory canal. So spine of Henle, that is a landmark which helps us. And the second important thing is we can see the tympanomastoid fissure line. Now, there are 2 suture lines which come in our surgical field. So one is tympanomastoid fissure, and then there's a tympanosquamous fissure. Now, why are we concerned about this fissure? Because when you are raising the flap, tympanometrial flap, we'll be seeing in detail all the different types of tympanometrial flap. So when we are raising the flap, there are high chances the tympanometrial flap can tear here. So we'll have to adapt a few techniques. We'll have to go deep into the fissure, and sometimes we have to use scissors, or we have to scrape it out of the fissure with care. For that, there are different techniques. In the endaural approaches, we have already discussed all the techniques, okay? So these, and also another place which we have to take care is in the tympanosquamous suture line. These 2 places, chances of flap tear is high, okay? And another thing is, this full extent. When you are exposing the external auditory canal, okay, the full extent which we have to see is we have to open the superior portion, okay, so that will be to the root of the zygoma. So here we have the zygoma, we have to extend till the root of the zygoma. Then we have to see the entire posterior wall, we have to see the inferior wall. So this whole extent should be visible when you are exposing. At last, when you fix with the mastoid retractors, these all areas should be visible. So that is our concern. Now let us see. Now, again, before going into the topic, we should know the standard terminologies which we are studying in, which we are using in otology. So, few terminologies, these are the terminologies of the ear canal skin incisions. So, what we have to see here, The first we are seeing is the vertical incision. So vertical incision is it is a 1 to 1.5 centimeter incision, which is seen in front of the helix, okay, from the incisura terminalis. So you know that what is incisura terminalis? It is the only area in the ear which is devoid of cartilage. So it is usually through the incisura terminalis where do the endoral approaches. So the whole detail of the endoral approaches and the importance of incisura terminalis, where to put the different types of incisions, everything has been discussed very thoroughly in the earlier class. Okay, so today we will be focusing only on retroauricular approaches. So this is the vertical incision. Then we have the intercartilaginous incision, which comes in the incisura terminalis. Then you have the number 3 is the lateral circumferential incision. Lateral circumferential incision means the circumferential incision which comes in the lateral part of the external auditory canal. So what is the lateral part means? So if you consider like a total, if there is the total length of the external auditory canal, it is around 16 mm. So in that, the first 7 mm from the suprameatal spine, medially we have the lateral part of the EAC. So any incision put there. So this is also lateral incision, lateral circumferential incision. This is also lateral circumferential incision because it comes in the lateral part of the EAC. Now again we can see there is medial circumferential incision. There is number 4. So what is medial circumferential incision? That is from annulus and 7 mm lateral to the annulus. So all the area which is from the annulus to 7 mm, that is from the middle part of the bony part of the EAC to the annulus is the lateral medial circumferential incision. Then we have medial radial incision. So here we can see number 5. Now radial incision means this is the radial incision. The one which is facing going towards medially, it is medial radial incision. Once which is coming laterally, it is lateral radial incision. And at last we have radial congal incision. So it is in the conga and coming out radially. So these are all small incisions, which will create different kinds of tympanomeatal flap. So as otology surgeons, we are mostly concerned with the tympanomeatal flap, the size of the flap, the approach, the place, the area we are going to expose. So let me in the first class we have very nicely discussed. So let me give a brief briefing about what we have studied. So what is the importance of different types of the incision? If we are if our idea of surgery, if our surgery includes mastoid region, if our area of concern is the mastoid region, it is better we put a lateral circumferential incision because our mastoid exposure will be easier. Now, if we have no interest in if we don't have to go to the mastoid because mastoid is already, there is no pathology, mastoid is very healthy, and only our concern is going into the tympanum, middle ear, then what we have to put it will be better if you choose a medial circumferential incision because the area of the flap we have to raise will be very less. Okay, it will be a small flap which we'll have to raise, and the remaining flap will be intact, and that will stay there, and it will provide a good graft. It will heal. It will increase the healing quickly because flap is very important. Okay, so these are the various various incision terminologies of the incisions which we will be using very frequently. Now coming to the retroauricular approaches. Now, retroauricular approaches. So this is the most familiar approach most of the otology surgeons use. So mostly used in children. Why? Because children, it gives children can have a narrow narrow cavity, which might be creating problem for an endoral approach. So that's why frequently in children we use retroauricular approach. The second thing is the fascia graft can be readily obtained from the temporalis muscle. Okay, we'll be seeing how different techniques where we can approach the graft easily. So, and another thing is excellent approach to mastoid. So that's why most of the otology surgeons, they use retroauricular approaches. Now we all know every surgery in mastoid and middle ear and mastoid can be done through retroauricular approaches. There is no exception. So it's all the surgeries which we know: cortical mastoidectomy, modified radical mastoidectomy, radical mastoidectomy, combined approach tympanotomy, cochlear implantation, higher end surgeries like cochlear implantation, facial nerve surgery, labyrinthine removal of acoustic tumor, retrolabyrinthine approach to CP angle, Okay, and also carcinoma of middle ear, extensive glomeruloscular, rare thrombophlebitis arising from lateral sinus thrombosis, everything. And in some cases of congenital atresia, where endoral approach is not possible, also retroauricular approaches we can use. Now here we are going to introduce, what are the first incision, different kinds of incisions, retroauricular incisions we are putting. So here you can see this is the fold of the retroauricular. This is the retroauricular fold, okay, just behind the pinna. So an incision which we put in the retroauricular fold is known as retroauricular fold incision. Okay. Now, keeping in mind the various, like if we have to approach the mastoid or what is the extent of the surgery, the flap we have to raise, we can actually put various incisions, which is 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, 4 centimeter behind the retroauricular fold. So these are known as retroauricular flap incisions. Okay. And another thing we have shown here is what is shown as postero-superior incision. Okay. So we will be seeing all these things in detail. Now, what is the importance of putting incisions in different levels? So when surgeons have devised all these techniques, they have certain things in mind, certain logic in mind when they are actually putting all these things. So what is the importance of a retroauricular fold incision? In retroauricular fold incision, actually we are directly going into the tympanum. We are actually directly going into the tympanic cavity, and we are not concerned. We are not going to raise the mastoid, or we are not going to do any surgery in the mastoid. For such surgeries, why to create a long flap? Because creating a long flap might come into you when you are actually creating a long flap, and when you're actually fixing it, with the mastoid retractor, this flap might cause a hindrance in your vision. So when you don't need a mastoid exposure, no need of going into a longer flap incision. We can simply put a fold incision and you can proceed with your surgeries. But while saying that, there are also importance for flap incisions. So what are the importance of flap incisions? Because in surgeries like cortical mastodectomy or in a like modified radical mastodectomy, where we'll have to do mastoid obliteration. So at that time, we are actually creating a very musculoperiosteal flap, okay, which has the muscle, and we have sufficient tissue for doing the obliteration. So actually, we ENT surgeons are actually blessed with an area of anatomy where we get all different kinds of flap, all different kinds of graft material. We have cartilage, we have perichondrium, we have sufficient fascia tissue. So everything needed for the repair of for the reconstruction or the repair mechanism, repair surgeries, everything is available within our surgical field. So we are so lucky in that. So that's why all these modifications helps us to create all those few blessings which we have. So another thing where we can do is when you are creating a flap incision, okay, I have already told you we will get enough sufficient tissue for closing the mastoid. And another thing is, when you if you extend, this is the conga. If you extend your skin incision or the flap incision, you will have the congal cartilage. You can have exposure to the perichondrium. Okay, so all these things, that is the importance. All these things should be considered and taken care of when you are choosing which incision. So that's why most of the surgeons, what they do, actually they prefer an incision which is 1 centimeter behind the retroauricular fold incision. So it helps us to go into the middle ear also. It helps us go into the mastoid also. So both this can be done together. That's why most of the surgeons, they actually prefer an incision which is 1 centimeter behind the retroauricular fold. So that is the retroauricular flap incision. Okay. Now next, once you are putting, so here this is the cross-sectional view of what we are seeing. Here you can see this is the fold incision. We have the suprameatal spine here, and we have the different kind of flap incision, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 centimeter behind us. And here what it is shown is, here this is the medial circumferential lateral circumferential incision. Here we have the medial circumferential incision. Here actually we are raising the whole posterior meatal flap. That this is the tympanomeatal. This is known as the tympanomeatal flap, which we are raising. Okay, and here you can see we are raising only the epithelium, and again in the D we are showing we are raising along with the annulus. So that we will be studying in detail in the coming slides. So all our surgery, once we have put the incision, okay, all our surgical, this is the surgical field we are seeing. So whenever we are starting any retroauricular approach, the first thing you have to achieve is you raise the flap, okay, you retract it, and then you will have the musculoperiosteal lining, which we have to cut. So while we are doing that, so what are this? There are small auricular muscles which we will come across. One is the posterior auricular muscle, we have the superior auricular muscle, and we have the oblique muscles here. So sometimes we'll have to cut these muscles, and the extent which is described in TOS is, it is 1 centimeter from the superior end of the helix to 1 centimeter above the end of the pinna. So that is the extent of the incision where TOS is advocating us. Now, once we are putting this musculoperiosteal incision, there are also different types of musculoperiosteal incisions. According to some surgeons prefer T kind of musculoperiosteal incision. They put a T, like a perpendicular incision at the linea temporalis, a line which is coming along the linea temporalis, and a line which is then a perpendicular line from that line towards the mastodon. Okay, some surgeons, they put a triangular, V kind of flap incision, some put a circular kind of incision. So it is according to the various surgeons, there are different types of musculoperiosteal incisions which we can put. So when we are putting this, again, we use a respiratory, and what we do is we actually retract this musculoperiosteum. So at the end, what we have to see the temporal bone. So here we are showing the right ear, and here we have the right temporal bone. So beneath this, when you raise, what are we going in search for? First, we'll be going in search for the suprameatal spine. Okay, then till what extent we have already studied, till what extent we have to raise. So we have to extend till the root of the zygoma, so that we have a good view of the superior end of the ESC. Then we have the whole view of the posterior end of the ESC. We have seen the mastoid suture line there, and also we have seen the inferior end. So once you do the dissection, once you completely extend, so this is what you see here. See the superior end, suprameatal spine is visible. The entire superior end of the ESC, superior part of the ESC is visible. The posterior part, posterior canal wall, and the inferior canal wall. Okay, till the root of the zygoma we have exposed. So this is the last end stage when you are doing. Now, all the variations which we are going to study in the coming slides is all the variations of all the variations where we put the incision. So this is the first thing which we'll have to achieve, the exposure. Always in surgery, the most important thing is exposure. Good vision and exposure is the key to any surgery. So that's why exposure first, then we'll be putting all the variations we'll be studying. So here I like to introduce, earlier already we have seen, this is if you put an incision, the next step in the surgery which you are going to do is we are going to put the circumferential incision. So it is upon which, where we put the incision, the different approaches starts. So first is medial circumferential incision. So it is actually from the spine of Henle to 7 mm medial to spine of Henle. So all this area comes in the part of lateral circumferential incision. So all this area come in the part of lateral circumferential incision. Now from the annulus to 7 mm lateral. So this is the area of the medial circumferential incision. Okay, and these are the various when we are raising along with only the epithelium of the tympanic membrane and along with the annulus of the tympanic membrane. So these different approaches which you will be studying. So in this class, we will be studying the first 4 techniques, the 4 different kinds of lateral circumferential skin incision, and 3 different types of medial circumferential incision, and their importance, their advantages, their disadvantages, significance, everything we'll be studying in detail. Now coming to the first section, that is lateral circumferential skin incision. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Hello.
You are audible.
Okay.
But since this is a non-subscription version, the meeting may get over in another 10 minutes. Okay. In that case, we will continue again in the next session.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Another after 10 minutes, it may automatically get cut. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay. So a lateral circumferential incision. So when you put the lateral circumferential incision, So actually, we are actually then continuing the surgery as a transcanal approach. So that is known as, then it is known as termed as retroauricular transcanal approach. Now coming to the first technique, that is the Plester technique. So again, we have already seen this is the first exposure we have achieved. Now we are going to, in the Plester technique, what Plester have advocated is that he starts with the drilling of the canal. So Plester technique was devised when you have a narrow canal. So always in the Plester had advocated that he actually starts with the drilling of the posterior canal wall, so that the area which we have to put the incision becomes visible. So he have used a 3 mm diamond burr to drill the posterior canal wall, and then we put the incision. Okay, and when you put the incision, he can see it starts from the 12 o'clock superiorly to the 6 o'clock inferiorly. That is the lateral circumferential incision he has put. And again, he also continues the incision with the superior edge of the circumferential incision, a radial incision in the superior end. Okay, 1 centimeter above also. So at the end, what we are end with, we are left with a inferiorly based flap. So when you put an incision here, we form a triangle. So we have an inferiorly based flap, okay, like this. And this flap we will have to elevate using the speculum, self-retaining mastoid speculum. So when you're doing is, what are the difference? So this is actually this flap. We have to push the auricle anteriorly, and we have to create the exposure. So many times the hindrance, the difficulty which we can come across is, sometimes we might not be able to see the posterior tympanum because our vision will be like this. So when we look like this speculum can come across in our view, causing any hindrance in the viewing the posterior tympanum. So at that time, sometimes the drilling this area might help. And also the other thing is, we'll have to use sometimes we can pull the graph, we can use a ribbon gauze, and we can pull it anteriorly and fix it, so that it might help here. So in another place, Morimatsu, what he has told, that when you are putting the circumferential incision, most of the surgeons, what they prefer is, they actually prefer cutting with it in a perpendicular cutting method. Actually, the idea they are telling is, when they cut it, they create a clean flap, which helps in healing. But Morimatsu, what he told was, he was advocating a different technique. While cutting the circumferential incision, use hold the scalpel in oblique position. He says that when you do like this, we'll get a more thinner flap, and actually he is telling the chance of healing will be more. So that's what Morimatsu was telling. Now continuing with the Plester technique. In the Plester technique, here we can see, once our lateral circumferential incision is done, we are left with this tympanomeatal flap. So this is known as the tympanomeatal flap. Okay, he is actually putting 2 radial incisions, one at the 12 o'clock position and at the 7 o'clock position, and slowly we are raising actually the flap. So when you are raising the flap, we get a good exposure to the tympanic cavity. So the most problem which happens is, we are having a huge tympanomeatal flap, which actually inhibit our vision in the anterior part. So in the anterior, for that, the next technique, which is known as the Palvas swing door technique, has been advised. Okay, so what is Palvas swing door technique? Here, the problem which we had, this was the problem we had. Okay, the tympanomeatal flap obstructing our anterior annulus vision. So what did Palva advised? Palva told that they divide the flap, okay, at the 9 o'clock position, so that we create a superior flap and an inferior flap. Now this will help us in viewing this thing. So, and there are also another important advantages for this Palvas swing door technique. Most of the surgeons, they do canalplasty. So when you do the canalplasty, the area of the place where we have to, after surgery, the area which we have to cover using the tympanomeatal flap has increased. So earlier, if only this much was the ESC, external auditory canal, now the extent has been, now after the canalplasty, it has become larger. So by using the Palvas swing door technique, actually it helps to lay the flap very nicely, beautifully on the canal wall which we have created. So that is another technique. And also Palva has told us, while raising the technique, either first you can put the 9 o'clock radial incision and then raise the flap separately, Or also what we can do is we can raise the flap in total, like totally we can raise the flap from the posterior meatal wall, then we can cut it using a scissors. So these are the two different techniques which Palva has told. Okay, so that we have studied in detail. And next we are coming to this fish technique. Okay, now what is fish technique? Again, everything starts from this first exposure. Everything we come to the first exposure. Now first, then we have to do is we are going to do the fish approach. So the idea of fish technique is that he actually did a large circum. We can see that the first incision is a radial incision in the 6 o'clock position. Okay, then actually do is it is an oblique incision coming from the anterior canal wall, joining the early first incision which we have put. So at the end, what we are viewing is a large circumferential incision, okay, leaving only the inferior part. So the advantage is, so in effect, what we are getting actually, we are raising a 270-degree flap. Okay, we are raising the entire skin, and we are raising a 270-degree flap. Now, what is the advantage of this? Here it helps us to eliminate the bony overhang on the anterior meatal wall. And also we can see sometimes there will be anterior meatal wall, overhanging will be there. So at that time we can drill it using, and we can also save the flap. Now another technique is that, again, when you are raising this flap, we can also use this after doing the canaloplasty. We can also adapt the Palva's swing door technique. Okay, it helps in vision also. It helps to lay the flap beautifully after the canaloplasty is done. Now that is the advantage of fish technique. Now Fish has also advised another technique where actually he has extended the incision. Earlier he has reached only till 4 o'clock position. Now he has brought the incision to 6 o'clock position and joined that with the radial incision. And again, how he is doing, he is raising the flap, in an anti-clockwise manner, like this. Completely he has raised the flap, and we can see this helps us to remove the entire annulus together with the tympanomeatal flap, now giving us sufficient exposure to the tympanic cavity. Now here you can see the entire tympanomeatal flap with the annulus is elevated and folded inferiorly. So actually we can do a very good canaloplasty by saving our tympanomeatal flap. Now, why are we emphasizing more on this saving tympanomeatal flap? Like if it is lost, we can use any other skin graft. But as Prahlad sir says, tympanomeatal flap is liquid gold, because it is only this flap has the self-cleaning ability. So that's why to preserve the tympanomeatal flap, it's at most importance for the surgeon. So few things, when you do this, one more technique is there. Okay, and another technique is,
Dr. Oshin, thank you very much. We left only 1 minute. Okay,
yes, sir.
We'll stop this and continue in the next session. Okay?
Sure, sir.
Yeah, because this is not a subscribed version. Our limitation is only 45 minutes. Okay,
sir.
Yeah, thank you all. We'll meet again perhaps on Saturday. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Okay, yeah.
Thank you.